Test test 1 2 3 test 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 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 test 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 1 2 1 2. Friday, July 7th. Whoa, Jimmy, you're making it dark.
Take 100%. So we'll leave it at 100%. It's a new projector. We're good. Yeah.
Test 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 1 2.
Are you guys going to show anything on the screen during the presser?
I believe so. We'll be using the screen. Yes.
So you will show videos up there?
I don't know about videos, but we'll show something. Yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
You'll show something?
Test test 1 2. Test test 1 2. 1 2 3. ¿Sí? Eso. No. Well, was it on? I'll double check.
The transfer? Okay, thank you.
Test test 1 2. Test test 1 2.
It's going to be just less than a minute.
Stand by.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate you staying late on a Friday afternoon. We do have some news for you concerning the investigation into the mass shooting that occurred in the Como neighborhood on the evening of July 3rd. So to bring you that information, I've got Fort Worth Police Chief Neil Noakes. Chief.
Earlier this week, Fort Worth suffered a heartbreaking tragedy. And it happened in one of the most historic and loved communities in Fort Worth. As you know, we had 11 people shot and 3 people lost their lives. And you know what? That's not even true. They didn't lose their lives were taken from them violently and senselessly. We at the Fort Worth Police Department, along with everyone at the City of Fort Worth, took this personally. Our officers from multiple units, including our homicide unit, began working around the clock to bring those responsible to justice. With assistance from several units, such as our gang unit, our real-time crime center, our directed response unit, our patrol officers, we are proud to announce that for the residents of Fort Worth, for the community of Como, and most importantly for the victims who died that day, Cynthia Santos, 22 years old, Gabriela Navarrete, 18 years old, and Paul Willis, 18 years old. We have made 2 arrests in this case. Today, Friday, July 7th, our homicide detectives arrested 20-year-old Christopher Reddick Jr. and 19-year-old Brandon Williams. Both are in custody at this time for murder. This is still an ongoing investigation, and anyone with any information, any video, anything that could be of value to the investigation, we ask that you call our homicide unit at 817-392-4330. I spoke with the mayor about this today and made her aware. She sent her regrets because of a prior family commitment. She could not be here, but she was thrilled to find out of the arrest. We had a meeting last night in Lake Como at the community center. It was a very moving meeting. It felt almost like a therapy session, to be quite honest. We heard about the trauma. We heard about the heartache. We heard from some of the family members of those who died that day. But we also heard about the resilience of the Como community, the resilience of the family that they are in that community, despite the tragedy of the situation, despite the young lives that were taken. We saw a community who, instead of laying down and giving up, stood tall, rallied around one another, and loved one another. And I have to say, it's been heartwarming to see the entire city of Fort Worth and the nation rally around the Como community. And we will continue to do so. We ask that you please continue to keep the loved ones of all of the victims, the Como community, the city of Fort Worth, and for the officers that responded that day, in your thoughts and in your prayers as we all continue to heal together. I'd be glad to take some questions at this point if you have any.
Chief, what were the circumstances that both of these men were involved in? Were they shooting at each other? Were they shooting at other people? What do you know about that?
That I don't know much about yet. We were just notified earlier today. As soon as we were notified, we wanted to get the information out. Our investigators are working on exactly what information they can release, but that I don't have at this point.
What led you to these 2 men?
The exact details, what pieces of evidence got them there, I don't know, but I can tell you this. Our gang unit worked really hard because we do believe this was gang related. From their expertise and their experience with the entire city of Fort Worth, we're able to work hand in hand with the homicide unit. We had officers poring over video over and over again to collect even the slightest bit of evidence they could to help them identify the people involved. So it really was a cumulative effort from many people within the department looking at every bit of evidence they possibly could.
In the original press release you all had sent out earlier this week, you mentioned there were several unidentified suspects. Are there other arrests that are expected in this case?
It's possible at this point. We have the 2 that we have confirmed that I mentioned that were involved, but we want to make sure we take every measure we can to take anyone else who might possibly be involved into custody as well.
But we still believe that they opened fire on the crowd, but we don't know why, or if there was someone in the crowd they were targeting?
My understanding, immediately prior to the shots, there was some type of an altercation. I don't know specifically who they were shooting at, but there's a potential that altercation is what initiated the violence to occur.
Are these guys from Fort Worth?
From Fort Worth, yes.
Were they arrested in Fort Worth?
That's my understanding. I don't know the exact location.
Did either suspect agree to be interviewed by homicide detectives?
I'm sorry?
Did either suspect agree to be interviewed by homicide?
I understand that they were interviewed. I don't have the details of the interview, unfortunately, but they did speak with detectives.
Was the altercation between the two of them or somebody else?
I'm not sure on that one, Jason.
You confident these were the only two people who fired guns that night?
We believe that they were two people that fired guns, but I'm not ready at this point to say they were the only ones.
Chief, this adds to the list of people in this age group just this year alone that's been involved in gun violence. What do you say to the young people in our city in this age group when it comes to the gun violence that we're seeing?
There is so much more to live for. There is so much more value that should be placed not only on the lives of the potential victims, but on themselves as well. It seems, unfortunately, the only conflict resolution skills some are using involve a gun. It doesn't matter how minor an altercation may be, someone pulls out a gun, and then maybe someone else pulls out a gun, and it ends in death and tragedy. What I'd like to say to them is, they're so young, they have so much to live for. Just take a moment. Councilmember Jared Williams is here with us today, and you've heard of the 1 Second Collaborative, but you may not really know what's behind that name. Just take 1 second. Just take a breath. If the first thought you have is to turn to a gun, just take 1 second. Make another choice. Live to see tomorrow.
Do we know if they were at the large gathering before the altercation, or they showed up, went to go get firearms and came back? Do you know any?
My understanding is they were there. Exactly where they retrieved those weapons, I'm not sure, but they had been at the event, yes.
I'm sorry. So the video, the surveillance video, I just want to make that clear. Did that help
That assisted, yes.
to getting these guys?
Yes, ma'am.
You had officers there, you were part of the security plan for the Como Fest, you had officers in the area, in the neighborhood, for the party that happened afterwards. Why didn't you break up the gathering that was in the street in those after hours?
You know, that's a very good question. I'm glad you asked that one. This event has been going on for many years, and there have been different methods of working with the Como community to find a way to make sure people can have a great time, but also be safe while they're there. We had officers in the immediate area. We had some stage at other locations for a quick response to any issues we might have had. The event we saw this year was much like what we saw last year, where we didn't see the violence. This year, unfortunately, somebody chose to grab a weapon and make it a violent situation. One of the things we discussed last night at the meeting at the Como Community Center is how this event needs to look going forward. Changes will be made. It's something we've discussed internally, and last night the Como community made it loud and clear that they want to be part of that discussion and they want to see changes too. So going forward, we don't know exactly what the event's going to look like. There will still be a parade on July 4th. We're talking about the Como Fest event, which happens prior to what you saw in the footage that's been released. But that after party, if you will, that's not going to look the same.
Will those changes that you apply to the Como Fest, will those be applied to any event throughout the city?
You know, just like every community in the city of Fort Worth, every community is unique. Every festival, every event we have is unique. And what we do is look at each specific event to see exactly how it needs to be tailored for the safety and enjoyment of everyone involved. So we're not looking at blanket changes across the board. We're just looking where changes are needed. And right now we're specifically looking at what needs to happen in Como.
Do they live in the Como neighborhood?
That I have not confirmed, but we're working to find out.
Yeah, based on the jail records, their zip codes are not in Como. So what do you say to the people in Como who want to have these events, who are concerned about people coming into the community and causing this violence? How are you going to keep them safe?
That was another discussion we had at the meeting last night. It's been said over and over again. The violence that happened in this community was not necessarily perpetrated by anyone from that community. This event has been going on for years, the parade itself for 73 years. I talked with some other folks at a barbershop today, and they said this event started for the Como community, period. It was started for people who lived there to fellowship, to be around one another, celebrate their community. But I also heard, again at the meeting last night, not only do we see people from all over Fort Worth, all over the Metroplex, but they said there were people who came from out of state specifically to come to this event. Out of state. We want to allow the families, the amazing people of Como, to be able to have a party without people who weren't invited invading their community. We're talking with them already about steps going forward. We're planning meetings to determine what this best looks like. We want to protect the citizens of Como, not just their safety, but their peace of mind, knowing that it is the Como community that's celebrating, and not necessarily people coming from outside of the community who have ill intentions when they arrive.
What do you say to the parents or family members or anybody that has a young child, even close to this age, who this might scare to go out and spend time with their neighborhood, their city? How do you tell them that it's going to be okay?
I think instead of my words, one thing they could do is look at the way the Como community has responded. They lived it. They lived this, unfortunately. And all I have seen out of them is what I've always seen in Como, which is that love for one another, the strength, the unity, the togetherness, the celebration of their historic community and of one another. In addition to that, I would like to ask.
We've got this weakening system moving.
All us. If you see something, say something. That's where the partnership with the police department and the community is absolutely vital. What we don't want is people to feel too scared to even leave their homes. But we hear stories about that across the nation, where people have anxiety, depression, because they're afraid of what they might face when they go to a grocery store, a house of worship, when their kids leave for school. Como is no different. They want the same things out of life as everyone. They see the same news broadcasts about tragedies across the country. But as I said before, they are standing strong. They are leaning on one another. They are helping the entire community get through this together. And I have to say that from the Fort Worth Police Department to the entirety of the city of Fort Worth, every resident everywhere across the entire city, we are absolutely committed to doing everything we possibly can to keep the citizens of Fort Worth safe, to make all of our residents feel safe. We have officers who do so much every day, put so much on the line to come in, oftentimes for people they don't know, and they're willing to make the ultimate sacrifice to protect those people, and we will continue to do so. Our job is not done, obviously, but we are on the job, and we will continue to be on the job.
Chief, you visited the barbershop. Can you tell us why? What made you go to the neighborhood? Why? What did you do that for?
The reason I went to the barbershop, this one wasn't even in the Como community. We have a program called Shop Talk where we go into barbershops, we'll go into salons, and we have conversations. And today the topic was Como, and that is exactly what we talked about. And there were several people in there who either went to Como when they were young, many, many years ago, lived in Fort Worth all their lives, and they talked about how heartbroken they were. They talked about the fact that when they went when they were younger, it wasn't like this. And they don't want to see it continue to be this way, and neither do we.
We take one more question.
Are they known to Fort Worth Police? Are they known to you guys?
I have had some with Fort Worth say they are familiar with the names, yes.
Can you update us on the status of the officer-involved shooting from Wednesday morning? You plan to release that video soon?
We're hoping to release that video early next week. We're still compiling some information, but the plan is the early part of next week. Listen, thank you so much for coming out. This is an important, as tragic as it is, it's an important conversation to be had. It's an important topic. We are happy to say that we made these arrests, but we're sad to say they were necessary in the first place. God bless all of you.
Thank you.
Daniel, are you